Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today I am joined by Tim Gardiner. Tim is a United States Marine Corps veteran where he was a landing support specialist. He's had a career in law enforcement for the past 16 years, including some roles in external security and 12 and a half years with the Birmingham Police Department. He's currently a probation parole officer in the state of Alabama, and he's also a keen advocate for the mental health and wellness of his members, where he implemented an officer safety and wellness program and established the peer support team, which catered to over 1,000 members of the Birmingham Police Department. He provided the initial and continuing education on relevant mental health subjects, including trauma, suicide prevention, resilience, and compassion fatigue. He's also one of the founders of Operation Righteous Valor, which is a non-profit organization whose mission is to assist veterans and first responders and their families in a time of crisis. So, Tim, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate you having me today.
Yeah. So we will start at the start, and I'd love to hear about what made you interested in joining the Marines, and especially sort of that over any of the other branches of the military.
Sure. I actually went into Army National Guard in high school. I was in Florida with the hurricanes and everything. Everybody wanted to do it, so I did that, joined it, went through basic training in between my junior and senior year, went to AIT after my senior year. Come home, and my best friend ended up going to the Marine Corps, and he left me. So I started looking at it. And the funny part of it is so the Marine Corps is the only branch that if you come from one branch to the Marine Corps, you still have to do boot camp. They don't care. So I had to do it twice. But that is
lucky you.
Yeah. To me, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I met some of the best friends of my life that now, almost 30 years later, I still talk to. And I got to see, I think, a lot more of the world than I ever would have saw if I stayed in the Army. My dad was career Air Force. I didn't want to follow his footsteps. We just weren't that close like that. I loved being on ship while I was in the Marine Corps. I did a couple 6 to 8 month cruises while I was on active duty. And it's nice to take my wife now to some of those ports that I went to then. You know, I don't remember much from back then. I really enjoyed it.
And you were was it a landing support specialist?
Yes. On active duty, that was my job.
Okay.
Was landing support. What it is basically they got a fancy word for facilitating the logistics of moving Marines and equipment, blah, 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 blah. Basically, if it rolls through some kind of port, whether it's a railhead, a seaport, an airport, or anything like that, the landing support are the ones that are responsible for that logistics. So loading the aircraft up, doing the load plans. Probably the best part of it and my favorite part of it, and most of the landing support people, were what we call helicopter support teams. So if you've ever seen a helicopter that's got like a Humvee underneath it or a big old pallet full of, something on it hanging down, we were the smart ones that stood underneath the helicopter and hooked it up to the helicopter so they could fly away with it. And it sounds crazy, but it was absolutely the greatest rush that I ever had. I got to do some amazing things with that.
Yeah, I bet.
One thing, when I was stationed in North Carolina, the Marine Corps, their helicopter training squadrons are there. So after they finish in Florida, they go there to learn the different Marine Corps helicopters. So we were being called out to help train new pilots. So some of them didn't have a lot of depth perception sometimes. And in the middle of the bottom of that helicopter is what we would call the hellhole, which is just a hole that the hook came from. And the crew chief would usually hang out, just stand there and watch it. And at one point, one helicopter got so low that I had to step over to the side. And then now I'm looking inside the helicopter because this is where the deck of the helicopter is now. And the crew chief just staring at me across. And I'm like, hi. So he had to raise back up. But then the other thing I got to do is in 1998, I had come back from Japan, which is where my first duty station was. and they sent me to Maryland. I don't know if you've seen the Osprey, the MV-22 helicopter. It changes to a plane and back up and all that. I got to hook the very first external load to it while it was in testing. So before it ever got put into
that's
service,
pretty cool.
they sent us up there to do that, to do the testing for external loads, and we got to hook up the very first one. They dropped it in the river there in Maryland, but it wasn't our fault. It was theirs. But it was amazing. It sounds crazy. It really does not translate well into the civilian world, but it
it's a somewhat unique experience, one might say.
Every time I meet a younger, we're called red patchers. Part of what we did was shore party. Did you ever watch Saving Private Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Many times.
You remember at the beginning when they had the beach landing and
Normandy?
Yeah. Tom Hanks, he's sitting there, keep calling the guy shore party, and rolls him over to talk to him and tell the ship this. That was pretty much our job. And then he rolls him over and the guy's face is all gone. That was our job. We were like, they said in World War II, our death rate was like 2.5 seconds or something like that on beach landings. But every time I meet a new one, we called red patchers because after, I think Guadalcanal or Okinawa, there are so many Marines trying to stay back on the beach and say they were with shore party that they sewed patches on their knees so they knew who was shore party. So we wore red patchers, and that's, to this day, they're still called red patchers.
That's what they.
And every time I meet a new one, I'm like,
can
you sneak me on one of the HSTs? I will come up there. You can sneak me on, put my doggone goggles on. Nobody will know that I'm almost 50 years old. And the last time I hooked up a load was 24 years ago. But can you get me in? And they always say no.
It'd just be like riding a bike. It'll just come back to you.
I'd love to do it one more time.
And so, you stayed in was it 4 years?
4 years on active duty.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I know sort of that's can generally be one of like the sort of standard length when you sort of enlist or sign up. Was there any like part of you that like wanted to stay in, or you were just like, no, I'm all done? When I went
on active duty, my goal was always to serve a whole career, 20 to however many years. That was always my goal. I have a terrible record with finding wives.
Did you say finding wives?
Yes. So I'm on wife number 4, or as I like to say, wife number last, because that's going to stay that. But my first wife was while I was in the Marine Corps. It was a girl from home. And while I was on my last float, 6 months at sea, she left me for another Marine there in North Carolina. And so I was getting back from that float in December. I was getting off of active duty in January is when I was supposed to get off of active duty. This was probably around September or something. And so I had sent an email to my monitor, the person that when you're re-enlisting, they try to, or you're looking to transfer, they're the ones that tell you what's available. And so I had sent him an email and said, look, I don't care what you do, get me out of North Carolina. I don't want to stay in North Carolina. There wasn't really any option that to me sounded good as far as I would go to. And so I got out. And I always tell people I regret it, but every decision brought me to where I am today too. So I regret that, but
that's
I'm happy with where I am too. So
no, that's understandable. And was it January 2001 when you got out? Ish.
Yep. January.
Did the events of like September that year kind of make you either like reconsider or,
Well, that's when I went back into the reserves. Actually, a week before
Okay.
9/11, and I went back into the reserves. I stayed in the reserves for a few years. Just some minor little deployments here, but nothing major. I never went to Iraq or anything like that. I did the best I could to do what I could, and made it through.
Oh, of course. But I can imagine like someone who like just gotten out and yeah.
I really want to go back on active duty. Like I said, I had a bad selection of wives. Wife number 2 came around the same time, and wife number 2 is really kind of where things really started to go bad. I ended up, so they held me on reserve status until 2006, but I actually had stopped going in 2004, late 2004, which with approval, like they put me in a non-drill status. Like I didn't go unauthorized absence or anything like that. It was approval. I was going back down to Florida. I was trying to get something going, and so they put me right at it, like 11 years of service with my National Guard time before that. And then,
no, fair enough. And so how did you find your way to a law enforcement career then after that?
To be completely honest, I never wanted to be a cop. I was doing firefighting as well as EMS, and I was doing security. I liked doing security. I kind of wanted to see myself do that. I had a brief period of time where I went to school in the Michigan Upper Peninsula for ski area management. I was going to work on a ski hill. We talked about it a little while ago about how I kind of bounced around a lot there between those years. A lot.
It seems like you've run quite the gambit in the career department, Tim.
I was living in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and my dad is from there. That's where his family was, and that's where I went. And I went up there some when I was a kid as well. And then I had a guy that I was working for a security company where I did patrol. Like we patrolled different accounts after they closed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there was a guy that was a Grand Rapids police officer, and we remembered each other from when we were kids, and then so we used to hang out quite a bit in between calls and stuff like that. He hadn't been with Grand Rapids PD for very long. Shortly after I left Michigan and went back to Florida, he was killed in a line of duty. I actually didn't find out about it until some months later. He had responded to a domestic call. He was the backup officer. He went to go around the side of the house to look for the suspect who was in the garage. And as he passed the window, he shot a shotgun through the window and killed him.
Jesus. That's awful.
I don't know what it was with that. Like I said, he was a friend. I mean, I want to say like best friend, anything like that, but we did stuff together. We were friends. That hurt me a lot. At that time, I started thinking maybe I do want to, for him. So at the time, I was living in Florida. Florida, if you didn't know, required most of the departments. You put yourself through an academy, through a community college, which means you pay for it yourself.
Okay.
And then you try to get a job afterwards. Yeah. Whereas in some other places, like here in Alabama, you have to be sponsored by an agency. You're on the payroll when you go through the academy. So I never understood my GI benefits very well. I used it when I was doing my little ski area management, but I didn't know how to use it like to do the police academy. So I started looking around. The girl I graduated high school with was living up here in Birmingham, Alabama, and we had reconnected. And she told me at the time the Birmingham Police Department was hiring a ton of people. And so...
Was this like wife number 3 or...
She was. Not yet at that point, but yes. Yes.
Shit, I was kidding.
No, she is. She is, which, going back to where I don't, Every bad decision brought me to where I is. She brought me to wife number 4 eventually. Wife number last again. But yeah, that was honestly the dumbest one I did compared to the other ones. That was a complete train wreck almost. That's a whole different story.
Oh.
But she told me about it. I applied.
Maybe you're just maybe you're just a diehard romantic, Tim. Maybe we'll just go with that.
So I put in for it. I applied on the personnel board because that's how Jefferson County here is. You apply and you can apply for all the agencies at once. So I did that.
Okay.
I moved up here, anticipating hopefully to get hired with that. Did some security when I first got up here. Then got a call. Actually, I went down to do a hurricane security after a hurricane down in Louisiana. I got folks and all that, and went down there, came back, got back on a Thursday. Now, for the last month prior to that, I've been sleeping on the floor of a shut down Target building or store, eating MREs and gumbo because they was bringing us good food. You know, all the people around there bringing us food, thanking us for being there. So I was probably not in the best shape of my life at the time. I get back on Thursday. On Saturday, Birmingham Police Department and Jefferson County Sheriff's Department both were doing their physical agility test. And I was like, there's no way I could do 2 in one day. So I had to make a decision. At the time, and even now still, Jefferson County, if you start with them, you start off in the jail. I had no desire to work in jail. None at all. So I went to Birmingham and started from there. I had a pretty big class. At the time, Birmingham was pretty much overlapping academy classes. So Birmingham ran, Alabama was a 12-week academy required. Birmingham ran a 20-week academy. And we ended up doing 21 weeks because of Christmas and all that. We missed too many days. The state was on us. Big class. They were all big classes. They were running pretty much, like I said, overlapping classes by a couple weeks. I think we graduated like almost 40 out of our class. Started with like close to 60. Then when I got out of the academy, I was number 2 academically, mainly because for some reason I can answer tests very well. I'm very good at the guessing games going down the line. It was never a big deal to me. There was a female recruit with us. She was very competitive when it came to that stuff. And for the majority of the academy, I was actually number 1. She was number 2. And I really didn't notice that until like week 14 or something like that. And she started saying I must have been cheating or something. And I'm like, I'm really good at abacadabra. I'm going down the step. And the last week of the academy, we hadn't had a quiz in like 3 weeks. And we went out to the range for some situational training. And we get out there and they're like, surprise quiz. And we're like, oh, crap. So we go in there and me and her both score an 87 or 86 or something like that. But the guy that was number 3 got like a 94 and jumped both of us and graduated number 1, and I graduated number 2.
I know.
So,
I bet she was real pissed at that.
Yeah, she wasn't too happy. He left. He went to the DEA after a couple of years. Right after I left Birmingham, she made lieutenant right before I left Birmingham. We were both made sergeant together at the same time. She made lieutenant right before I left, and then was appointed as the assistant chief. Like I think a month or 2 after I left, where she was the number 2 person in the department, which did not make a lot of people happy because at that point she had been there for 12 and a half years. She had jumped a lot of captains and deputy chiefs and stuff like that, and so it was kind of a challenge for her. We've not always seen eye to eye, but I can respect her doing what she did. And, she's no longer in that position, but she served in it for quite a while. And so I always tell her she won, she beat me because I'm not going any higher than where I'm at. So quite happy. almost dreamt about being a
Yeah.
chief one day, and that was kind of my thing. And my wife works at the FBI. She works pretty strictly with law enforcement executives, chiefs, and sheriffs and stuff like
Oh, okay.
that. I'm like, yeah, no, I know enough of them now. I don't want to do that anymore. So I want to do what I'm doing now, trying to help people, help officers. As much as I say as a
Yeah.
chief, I would do that. You can't do all of that as much as you can if you're right there with them.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy where
Exactly.
I am.
And so you spent 12 and a half years with Birmingham. And it sounded like, you spent a lot of that time as well as like a school resource officer. And that sounded like it was something that was really, really important to you.
What ended up happening is when I was a kid, I was in a youth organization called Civil Air Patrol. It's an Air Force auxiliary. They have a cadet program. They have an adult thing. They do search and rescue and stuff like that. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was an instructor with a program that's called Young Marines, which is the same concept. And so Birmingham had Explorers. I wanted to do the Explorers. I was quite happy at West Precinct, which is the busiest precinct in really the state, but at the time in the department. I was happy. I was a rec investigator. I like being able to use my mind. Unfortunately, a math nerd when it comes to things, so I like that with recs. But I wanted to work with the Explorers. And the only way you could do it at the time was you had to be assigned to the division, the youth services division at the time. And that was to be an SRO. So I applied and interviewed 3 straight times and finally got accepted. And when I got over there, I did start working with the Explorers. We built up a very good program. But then I realized I really, really liked helping kids in general. And so in Birmingham, we only have SROs in the high schools. So we don't have the ability to do like kindergartens and stuff. Although we do programs at the schools, we're not assigned to them specifically. And I realized that was the best job in law enforcement at the time. I worked Monday through Friday. I worked summer school and night school and sporting events and stuff like that. But I had a take-home car, which was great. And then, again, I like to tell new SROs, and I told this to my brother who just started as an SRO in Florida, that, well, he's in elementary school, so it's not going to be quite the same, but there are 3 types of kids that we deal with in the high schools, especially in inner city high schools like in Birmingham. Was you deal with pretty much your straight A kids that know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to go to college. They're going to go in the military. They're going to go work at this. They already know what they're going to do, and there's very little that we have to do with them to make sure that they get through 4 years of school. On the complete opposite side of that, you have your troublemakers. You have in Birmingham schools, you have your gang members. You have your people that are already committing crimes. We've dealt with a bit of even human trafficking in some of the schools here. We've dealt with guns. We've dealt with drugs, all of those things within the schools here. There's not much you're going to do with these kids. We have to be that enforcer when it comes to them. We have to make sure that we're on them, that they're not out here making life dangerous for everybody else in the schools. But the third set of kids are kind of on a fence. They're not terrible. They might skip class here and there. They're probably getting B's and C's, D's, whatever. They're not fully invested in it. But they're also not already ID'd as criminals or as gang members or something like that. They're just kind of right there. And this is just as true for teachers as well. But as far as for SROs, our biggest thing is any interaction we have with them can push them to either direction. If you treat them like shit, they're going to freaking probably roll over to the wrong side. If you give them good information, if you give them mentorship and stuff like that, then maybe they'll end up on the other side. Maybe they graduate right there on the line. That's fine. But our interaction with them can affect which way they go. And I've worked with some great SROs over the years that have really, really reinforced that. I had my caught doing good lunch throughout 1 week, I would sit there and identify whether student athletes at the games that we were working or students I see inside the schools. I could take referrals from teachers or whatever. But every Monday, I would bring 6 or 7 kids in to the conference room, and I would feed them lunch. Not what they was getting at school. My wife would go. Jim and Nick's is a big barbecue place down here. She'd go pick up barbecue for them, bring it up.
Okay.
And that was out of my pocket. That was me doing it. Officer Richard Mason, who is he was one of my academy classmates. We were SROs together. We worked together at a couple of schools sometimes. He would feed the teachers for one. Like he did every year, he did a huge thing for the safety committee where when I tell you that man can cook, that man can cook. And then he do the same thing with the students. He would take students to, appointments and stuff like getting close to the football season. They got to have their physicals. My mama can't take me up there. I got you. Come on, take him up there. They come to his church. They do. I mean, he is probably one of the best SROs I ever dealt with or ever worked with.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of them. I mean, I hate to see where that unit is right now because of problems that the whole department is having. That unit is very understaffed right now, which is dangerous for the SROs, but it's dangerous for the kids as well. And they can't do what we were doing back then because they just don't have the time.
Yeah.
And that kind of frustrates me. I got lucky to go back there as a sergeant. As a supervisor when I made sergeant. I went to patrol for a couple of years, but I managed to go back over there before I left. And being able to support them as a supervisor to me was great. I mean, that was when I left, it was from that position, and that was the hardest part of me leaving was these guys are in good hands right now with me. What's going to happen when I'm gone? And so that part kind of hurt or whatever when I left.
Yeah, understandable. And so how did it come about that you went down the path of, getting really involved with like the member welfare in terms of mental health and peer support? Was there like a preceding incident, or was it sort of just something that you'd started to notice over time?
It evolved over time. A few years in, one of my sergeants when I was an SRO, when school was out, is when we got our continuing education in. And so one of my sergeants and me, we drove a few hours to an agency on the Alabama-Mississippi border and went to, it was Preventing Law Enforcement Suicide instructor class, train the trainer class. Wow. And at that time, nobody really knew much about my suicide attempt. I really didn't talk about it to really anyone. Matter of fact, my mom found out very similar to something like this. I was doing a talk somewhere, and that's how my mom found out about it. But that kind of brought back to me that, okay, at that time, I'd already known 2 officers at Birmingham who had committed suicide. One was actually a homicide-suicide that played out over the radio. He called on his police radio, telling us what had happened, and that was heartbreaking, to say the least. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what went through our minds at the time.
Can't even imagine.
Shortly after that class, I think we had 2 officers who were married. The husband, who was my classmate, committed suicide right before Christmas, and the wife, who also worked for our agency, committed suicide a couple weeks after New Year's. And that got me back onto, now I'm going to try to do what I'm going to do to do it. And so at that point, I started submitting memos. I started doing research. I started attending different trainings and trying to get something started at the agency. It was hard.
Can I just...
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but was anyone sort of higher up going, clearly something's going on, or it was just blinders on?
Blinders on, for the most part. Especially, I always call our admin building the Ivory Tower, 6 floors, but on the 6th floor, which is where the chief and the deputy chief's office, absolutely blinders on. There was nothing done after that. They sent the chaplains. And we're in Alabama, so everybody down here is churchy and all of that, which I'm not. Was raised kind of not really super religious, but whatever. And I will still say 100% I believe in God and a higher spirit, but I guess between my places I've gone when I was in the military and what I've seen just now that people do in the name of some religions, I don't have issues with it. But down here in a lot of departments, chaplains were basically all you had. And that's, in my opinion, like I would have issues with it if it was a chaplain coming up trying to talk to me and doing this and this. I actually bring that up when I teach suicide prevention and intervention classes. It's I always tell people, let the person that you're trying to help bring religion into the conversation. Don't bring it in yourself, because you don't know what their beliefs are.
Yeah.
But that's all we really had at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it. And we had one person, one actual officer who was the chaplain liaison. And beyond that, all we had was civilian chaplains that were volunteers. It wasn't helpful. At the time that when I first started Birmingham, we had EAP, which employee assistance, what most people have. The problem with our EAP at the time was it was in this little old house kind of office building, and it was literally across the street from one of our precincts. So if you went in there to talk to someone, more likely somebody saw you.
Everyone saw. And
you get back to the precinct, and they'll be like, well, what was you over there for? How do you even know I was over there? You're not supposed to know that. That building burned down, and from what I've been told, it was not intentional. But I'm not too sure about that. But it did burn a while back. They've gone to. There's a different system now, and I'd like to bring that up a little bit later. But kind of go where you're saying as far as bringing up how I got there, how we got there. After Mike and Angie, I started pushing, and I was just an officer at the time. I was not popular. I didn't know a ton of people. I wasn't in the circles, the cliques, or anything like that, that you get in departments. I just was going to do what I could. And I sent memo after memo after memo after memo and trying to get it done. And I had the sergeant that went to that class with me also helped me, the captain I had at the time, who I credit for my marriage number lasting so long, because she made us take it slow, because she knew my wife as well. And so she was very quick. Don't get married. Don't get married. Don't get. So every time we went somewhere, we saw a wedding chapel, we'd take a selfie and send it to her. I never really heard her this much, but there's a couple of choice words sometimes. But I love her to death. I really do. She I think was a big help with a lot of it, especially at least getting it to the Ivory Tower. But again, just nothing was happening with it. A few years ago, 15 or 2016, Alabama passed a peer support bill. That bill made conversations with a certified, appointed peer support person between them and a first responder. It made it privileged communications. So
really?
It's a little bit stricter than some other states' laws because it completely it has the same rule of evidence as a conversation between an attorney and their client. So there's not been a test in Alabama yet to that privilege, mainly because you kind of, if you're an attorney, you kind of open yourself up to precedents. So that helped. So Alabama Alliance, Alabama Law Enforcement Alliance for Peer Support. It's a very long name. was formed. It formalized the training and it hosts the training free to any agencies
Okay.
that want it. And
Yeah.
it's 32 hours long. So that was the first start.
Yeah.
Some of us from Birmingham went to that on our own time, got certified through that, but we were not appointed by the department because the department didn't have a program. So our privilege was kind of
Becky.
but it allowed us to have that training and ability, and some people in the department would still reach out to us because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2018, I got made sergeant. I promoted to sergeant. I went to patrol as a patrol sergeant. Latasha Carter was also an SRO at the time. I'd actually kind of moved out of the schools and was working in our office doing community stuff. He came and actually took over took my take home car because I got an unmarked one. He took my marked car where I left a picture of Susan in it, my wife, and held it hostage for like a week. But we had worked West Precinct together. We were very close.
Yeah.
He was probably one of my favorite people of all time. He got promoted to sergeant, went to North Precinct, and I was at South Precinct. We got promoted at the same time. While at South Precinct, again, I started pushing more and more, trying to get some type of peer support program started. Later that year, Birmingham hired a new police chief who was from LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department. And if you don't know much, I don't know if you know much about LA's programs. LAPD has had peer support since like the early 70s. California has only had a peer support law for like 3 years. LA pretty much codified it in their policy about the privilege and the confidentiality 40 plus years ago.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
so
incredible.
When he got there, I started sending it again. And I was hearing good things that if we were going to be having it, or he wants to have it, we're going to try to get it done. But we were working on establishing the policy, how the actual department policy would read, one would require notifications, stuff like that. January 13th of 2019, Watasha was working a vehicle break-in detail in North Precinct near one of the nightclubs there. They were having a lot of cars that were getting broken into. He was in a vehicle. They had a couple officers kind of in plain clothes watching the area. They identified a suspect, and Watasha came with the marked car. They stopped him. They got up to him. The officer went to place the suspect into custody, put handcuffs on him, and they started fighting. Suspect pulled a gun, shot and killed Latasha. I was off that night.
Sorry.
I was off that night. I don't drink on nights that I have to work the next day. It's been one of my biggest things since I started doing this, and I didn't want to repeat of what I was going through when I was homeless and stuff. It's one of my rules. I don't drink if I'm going to work the next day or if I'm flying. And I wasn't the next day on this, and I was off. So I got home, had a couple glasses of whiskey, took the pills the VA gave me, and I was out like a rock. Finally, about 5 a.m, my phone vibrating woke me up, and I answered the phone. And Vanessa Jackson, who was a sergeant, got promoted at the same time as we did, was working that night. She was working. She was one of the ones trying to get peer support going with me and all of that. Also, I'd worked with him out west, and we worked out west. And all she can get out was that he had been shot. And my biggest regret has always been like she did tell me that he was gone. After a few minutes, she was able to tell me that he was gone and that he was at UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, which is the major hospital here in the area. I couldn't go down, and I live 15, 20 minutes from the hospital. I mean, just outside of the city. And I could not bring myself to go down there. And I've regretted that because my friends were there and they were hurting too. And that's the whole thing I was trying to do with peer support is I want to be there for them when they're hurting so that I could take some of that away from them. And I couldn't. And it, like I said, one of the biggest regrets I had. Yeah. And after that, we brought in outside peer support from departments and that already had people appointed and certified. We were there as well, the ones of us that had been certified already, trying to help out with the different areas. We went through, I mean, just a lot in those couple days. There's this place in Birmingham, Railroad Park. It was built 10 years ago or something like that. And it's kind of weird because it's everything around it is South Precinct, but the Railroad Park itself, for some reason, is North Precinct. And it's just a little park, stretches a couple blocks. And me and Latasha would meet there a couple nights a week, and we eat our dinner there because we both had crappy schedules. We were working midnights and stuff, but that was our spot. We went there all the time. And when it happened, there's no way I can go anywhere near that right now. Well, I was working, and I got a phone call from my lieutenant saying I needed to go to Railroad Park because there were some people that had come out of town that wanted to do like a candlelight thing and pray and all that, and they wanted to do it at Railroad Park. And the chief was going to be there, and my captain was there, my lieutenant. And I don't remember who else, but they started doing the thing and everything and all that, which is, I mean, I'm really appreciative for that, but it was not the right place for me to be at the right time. And I completely started breaking down, and I walked off to the car and kind of sat in the car for the rest of it, or sat outside the car for the rest of it. When I started to kind of start to cry and break down a little bit, I saw the chief kind of looking at me, and he whispered to, I can't remember if it was either my precinct captain, or it was the guy he had chose as assistant chief, who was a Birmingham person and everything. And I just saw him kind of whisper back and forth, and I'm like, if he's about to talk some trash because I done walked off or whatever, then we're gonna have a problem, or whatever. And shortly after that is when I actually heard from his office that they wanted us to work on getting our peer support stuff done, and we did. Within a couple months, we really started getting the ball rolling on it, which I kind of appreciated that. There's a whole bunch of issues with that department because of him, but he was the only one that sat down with us as a chief and walked us through things. And I was used to everything being told no for everything for so much that when we went to him and we started saying stuff, and he was like, well, how many people do you want on this team? And I'm like, well, right now we have 10 officers and supervisors on our own that have gone and got certified. We'll host the class here, and we'll certify some more people. He's like, well, how many more people do you want? I said, I'll be happy if I get 5 more people. He says, oh, you're thinking way too low. And our first team, after that training, had almost 30 people for a department that at its most has about 1,000 people. So that's one thing I could say about him, is that he prioritized that when it was needed. Shortly after, within a year or year and a half of Latasha being killed, we had like 3 or 4 other officers that were shot through different types of incidents and stuff like that. We went through a pretty rough year, but we were ready. And so I'll always be appreciative of that. And I've always, what I'm doing now, while what we did with peer support as far as during officer-involved shootings or line of duty death is part of it. The mental health aspect of it, the suicide prevention, and the stuff like that. Like I said, I think my own personal history with it, having seen it during my 12 and a half years at Birmingham, knowing 4 officers that killed themselves, having officers shot, been hurt, responding to those scenes, those being friends and stuff like that, it really cemented in what I wanted to see happen. And the one thing I always say, and I've heard people kind of say stuff about me leaving when I left, but when I left, that program was in place and it was there for those people that needed it. And it's like anything else in that department. They're down over 300 officers in the entire department. That unit's down a little bit, but there's still the same people in it putting the work in. And Vanessa is actually, she took it over from me when I left, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to take it. So that started what I was doing for Birmingham, and now what I do in the larger aspect of it is it kind of built off of that. I'm currently serving as the region coordinator for the Alabama LEAPS, where I'm responsible for, I think, 7 counties, over 100 peer support people. We're providing them support, and most of central Alabama, most of central North Alabama. And it's not always something that happens with the officers. We've had incidents. We've kind of stood up to prepare to help a different region that had 2 teenagers. One drowned, one was resuscitated. Not normally our thing. It's not our area, but I bragged on the region that I'm in very much, and they've not needed me for a whole lot of stuff this year. I'm appreciative because of stuff I've been working on. Anytime, like, especially with officers, we got an officer that gets shot, 99 or gets hurt even in a wreck or something like major wreck, 99% of the time they're coming to UAB. So we have UAB Police Department has peer support trained personnel there. There's generally one of them on duty almost all the time. So one of them will make contact when the ambulance gets there. Birmingham policy, BPD policy, is that any officer that is brought to a hospital in the city of Birmingham, a BPD peer support team member will respond out there and make contact with either the family or the department. Anything you need, you let us know. Since UAB has stood up their team, we've not had to do that quite as much. They take care of it. They're doing an amazing job with it. But we have a system here that works. When I was at South Precinct, we came up with a plan when escorting an officer that's coming from anywhere south of the city. If they can't go by helicopter, we had a whole plan for stopping cars, traffic, and all of that. And we did that through 5 Points South, which is, for the longest time, one of the biggest nightclub areas, the Friday, Saturday night places. We had an officer that came from Auburn, Alabama, that came up, and we were able to completely shut down that intersection with hundreds of drunk people and push those ambulances through at 50, 60 miles an hour. And
that's incredible.
We're good at that, but I'm very proud of what we've done in this area, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like to brag about it, get a chance.
Well, but I mean, Tim, it is something incredible, and that you should be, proud of implementing. And I mean, it kind of sounds like there was, I don't know, like the exact time span, but between the multiple suicides of some of your colleagues and then the line of duty death of your friend, like, it was a rough few years for Birmingham there for a while. And obviously you stepped up to the plate with this thing that had been, festering around in your mind, and something that you'd been sort of fighting for. And also, like you mentioned, you'd had some of your own previous suicidal ideation. So you really sort of, I guess, could sort of like see it from both perspectives. Like, you were on the side of having to grieve these people that you loved and respected and lost in really tragic circumstances, but then also knowing what it was like having those thoughts that there is no way out. And the best thing that I can do for everyone is to end it.
And that's one of the biggest things that I talk about whenever I'm teaching or speaking on anything when it comes especially to suicide is, everybody says that you hear a lot of, I'm sure you heard before, a lot of the falsehoods that people believe or whatever when it comes to.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I always say it's not the only answer to a problem, but in that person's mind at the time, it's the only answer that they see. I couldn't, during my time, I didn't want to be a burden to anybody else. I stayed with family members in the past. Things have been rough. I didn't have the greatest relationship with my parents after I grew up, pretty much. I have a great relationship with my mom now. I don't have a relationship with my dad at this point. But I mean, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know who else to reach out to. I'd stayed with some friends that I went to high school with. It got rough there, and I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what my benefits were at the VA. Was a big one, which is one of our campaigns that we want to work with Operation Valor. But I didn't know I could get health insurance there, even if I didn't have any money or anything like that. I didn't have a VA disability at the time. I didn't do that until Life Number Last got me started on that. I went out health insurance for years. Probably could have helped some stuff, but I didn't have anything. I didn't find that out until years later. So the only thing I can think of, I was like, look, this truck's going to get repossessed one of these days. I said, I ain't got no more money. I ain't got no gas in it right now. I've got a 38 and a bottle of Sailor Jerry rum. That's all I had. And that was the only solution I can have. And when that deputy came up and sat and just started talking to me, and he could see that I wasn't doing good or anything like that, he took me to get something to eat. It was the first meal I had in a couple of days. I mean, I was more worried about buying alcohol than instead of buying food, which was great for my figure, but not great for everything else. He gave me a phone number of somebody to call the next or on Monday to get maybe get a job, and that worked out well for me. Paid for a hotel room for me, and I never got his name. I don't even know how to get in touch with him now or anything like that. And I love to talk the story about him, and I wish that I had the ability to make sure he understood that he saved my life that day. And if somebody I know from down there thinks that he actually has passed away, because this was in 2000, towards the end, 2006, 2007 time. So I hope that if you did, he understands I am what I am today because of him buying me a waffle at Waffle House. It's really hard. And
I think that's something really important as police officers. He showed you a really impressive and unique level of kindness when
he could have arrested me.
And instead he showed you kindness, and from everything that you have sort of talked about in terms of your career and being like the youth resource officer and that kind of thing, like it really sort of like the impact that he had on you, not only in terms of helping you out and like you say, potentially saving your life that night, like it's like he left an imprint with that level of compassion that you sort of turned around and then showed it to others in kind.
I love talking about him. Like I said, I really didn't know him or anything like that, but I love talking about it because, like you said, that really did kind of define how I have been as a police officer. I think throughout everything I've done, even on the streets, even now as a probation officer.
Yeah,
I deal with people now who are trying to start their lives over again, whether they're coming out of the prison system or if they're like right now. I work strictly probation cases, but we're trained to deal with both. I've done both in the past, but right now I just do probation. Well, some of them are coming out of prison and then have a probation sentence to deal with. And so we do that. And then some of them are just getting probation as a sentence and they're coming to us. Many of them don't have jobs, don't have education, don't have some of them nowhere to stay or anything like that. I could just let them come in every month, fill out their piece of paper, yell at them to pay their fees and get a job or whatever and be like that. But I don't want to be like that. You know, I've seen where and some people that I know that have been through the system or whatever, that having someone that actually will try to help you makes all the difference in the world. And every time one of mine gets off of supervision because it's the end of the sentence, or even get off early because they did so well, makes my day, makes my job easier. I have 96 active people on my caseload, a total of 146, and that'll go up probably in the next couple of weeks. And it is hard to deal with all of them, and it's luckily not all of them need as much assistance as the other ones. But I'm constantly trying to find people programs or whatever, and partnering with them. Because, you know, the other point about that is with my work that I do in mental health and even with Righteous Valor, some of the resources that I use for my work now plays over to help with a veteran or a first responder, substance abuse treatments.
100%.
I don't know how the systems up there work.
I would.
I don't know how like up there is. So we've got one place here that's real popular or real well known as a rehab place. When we first started like the peer support stuff, the first time we sent someone there was a police officer, and they put them in a room with someone that had been arrested multiple times. Didn't recognize the officer, but we found out about it fairly quickly, like the next day. Well, now there's a partnership with them that there's a separate intake for first responders, so that will not happen again. But it's the same resource for either or. It's just, we just got to make sure it's safe for our guys going in there. And that's
100%. Yeah.
Can I show you something?
Yeah, I think, of course.
So I brought this from work, and so I was going through it today, but I was just like, but all these things, all these different resources that are available, addiction, serenity, stigma of addiction, half of this I get from work, half of this I get from IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which I served on the National Consortium on the Preventing Law Enforcement Suicide that made some of these resources. But even some of the resources I get from IACP, I've used for offenders. Trying to multiply what your abilities are and stuff. And so I've got that bag, and then I got a bag that I just got from the VA that's full of mental health and substance abuse and all of that. That one of my offenders that's on my caseload, his wife is actually over the mental health stuff at the VA. And was my shrink's boss, but my shrink retired. So it's kind of weird. But even still, she brings me stuff all the time because she knows of Righteous Valor that we're trying to do there. So, which is the first mission of Righteous Valor. So, but a lot out there, and you have to sift through what is big. Right now I'm on the working group through IACP for mental health. What we're doing now is we have, as a group throughout the country, have basically pulled up identified resources for different things. We've got a big old long Excel spreadsheet of all these different resources, what they're for, kind of like grouped together and stuff. And what we're getting ready to start here is a couple of us are going to go through and we're going to verify all of them. We want to make sure that this resource is still available, this resource
appropriate,
is,
competent, culturally.
well, one of the biggest things and one of our biggest questions is, what is your experience in dealing with first responders, especially with mental health professionals? We're blessed here. I've got a few mental health professionals I know here that have experience with first responders. One of them is married to a cop. She has a very big private practice with a couple offices. Her husband's an officer, might be a sergeant. There's one is a retired sergeant from the police department near here, and he retired from the police department to work for the city directly as their mental health liaison. But he also has private practice. So they understand dealing with police officers. It's a whole different animal dealing with a police officer than it is with anybody else, or most other times. You got to understand what we go through. And that's one reason why nobody liked the EAP that Birmingham used to have. You didn't have a choice. If you want to talk to a counselor, you went there. They didn't care about you. They were getting paid either way from the city. Lots of people I knew did not like that. They now have in their health insurance. So I was saying their health insurance.
I was just going to say that's like an issue sort of throughout the country, and it's like such a huge conversation that and so many of my guests that I've had come on, they're like, I reached out through the EAP, and the person I reached out to, they're like, we're not even affiliated with that anymore, or they go and see them. And I mean, and I'm sure you would have heard it, like how many times that this person has been struggling and traumatized and everything, and they go and see a counselor, and then what they tell the counselor traumatizes the counselor. They cry, they vomit, they've had all these experiences, and that just shuts that person down. And it can't be that way. Like, for people of this population to reach the point, especially if they're that kind of old salty types that, they're very resistant to it. And then if they have that awful experience when they do finally reach out, I mean, fucking hell, it's so detrimental.
So Birmingham changed their insurance, something with their insurance a few years back, where instead of going to a specific place, you basically call the insurance company up and say, hey, I want to speak to a counselor. You got, I think it was 12 or it was either 12 or 20. Both those numbers are bouncing in my head. Visits with no copay. And what they did is they would give you a list of counselors, and you find one that's close to you or sounds like you do better with, go to it. You go to that person, you get done with that first meeting, and you're like, no, this ain't the one. Great. Call somebody else on the list, you can switch it. And I knew many people at Birmingham that utilized that and were big proponents. It worked. It really helped. I am not a fan of in-house EAPs for the most part. LAPD, Nashville, Metro Nashville are two that have in-house, but they have in-house psychologists. They have in-house licensed counselors. They have huge systems where it's not like you're just going to talk to somebody that's going to run around and go tell IAD or the Ivory Tower. That's one thing we pushed when we started the program at Birmingham, was that we were notified of well, no, let me take that back. IAD was required to ask someone if they would like to speak with peer support. Because one of the most stressful things that you can go through is that IAD investigation. One of a very common trigger for law enforcement suicide is an IAD investigation. I'm dealing with something with a car at work now, and some damage on my car, and took too long to report it, and had to deal with our IAD, and that stressed me out too. But it is what it is. I've dealt with it in the past. It's all right, but that's very stressful. And we had some that would call us, and we would come up there and we sit and talk to them, and we tell them whatever, and we had to make sure that because I think at first IAD called us because they wanted us to come talk to the person and then tell them what they told us about. No, we're not going to do that. by law.
No.
We
Oh my
can't do
God.
that. I always tell people when I teach the classes and
That's a shitty fucking thing to do. Like, oh my God.
that's IAD. That's what I don't know what y'all have in Australia, but that's IAD. All shitty.
We call them the, well, we used to call them the filth.
Well, usually the rat squad, or personally with me, it's just assholes. But like, I've known 2 people that have gone to IAD as to be up there, like as officers,
investigators.
and I know a bunch of them have gone up there. I know 2 that, in my opinion, they didn't change. One was probably one of the best sergeants I ever worked for, and then the other one was someone I had known pretty much their entire career. And when they came out, whenever they came to something I was dealing with, they always seemed decent, you know. But we make sure that we told them, look, you don't have to tell me anything about this investigation. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here. If you feel like you need someone to vent to, talk to, or whatever, you can do that with me. As long as you don't tell me anything about like a criminal act where by law I am required to report it. I want to hear, I'm here for you to have someone to freaking yell at, to get frustrated with, which is my wife now, which she'll usually say, turn around and say, why are you yelling? But she will put up with it when I need to. But IED is very stressful. Everything. Birmingham's crazy. You go to IED, Birmingham, they take your gun when you walk through the door. It don't matter if you are coming up there for an interview or what. They're going to take your gun as soon as you walk through the door. I don't like that. One of the biggest stress. Okay, I'm going to ramble a second here, but I feel like
that's okay.
I feel like this is important because one of my things now when it comes to the first responder side of this, especially the law enforcement side of this, is what is that 6th floor? What is that ivory tower that is doing that is making officers kill themselves?
Yeah.
Because
or just making their mental health worse overall.
Exactly. This is not an official statistic, but a lot of mental health stress, mental health problems, and suicide in law enforcement could be fixed by fixing the executive staffs.
Yeah.
And the people that are trying to impress them. There's a lot that needs to be done. But one thing I would say, so obviously I was older when I started law enforcement, and I know some other, a lot of other people. I wasn't the oldest one in my class, but I was older. I was in my 30s when I started. In the state of Alabama, you could be hired as a police officer at the age of 19. Crazy for me to believe, but you can. When I went through, you had to be 21 by the time you graduated. We had one young man in our academy class that turned 21 during the academy, but he was a Marine reservist. He, was grown up some or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, imagine you've been in this job for 20 years. You started when you were 19 years old. You get called to IAD over something, and you get into an investigation, and they take your badge and gun, and they make you sit on a couch for months while they investigate this, whatever happened.
Yeah.
You go on social media and you look at cops' pages, especially on TikTok. They always got guns. They always got badges. It's a huge part of who we are. It's our identity almost.
It's part of our identity, yeah.
And so you take that away from somebody where that's the only thing they've really known for 20 years. What does that do for their mental health?
Yeah.
Does not help.
Nope.
A big thing with that is officer-involved shootings. Listen, I don't know how it is up there or even in Australia. Birmingham, for the longest time, if you were involved in an officer-involved shooting, you were out of service for 6-8 months. Whereas the state finishes their investigation usually within a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And after that, all they're doing at the state is making sure, were you within the law? Yes. So now the city has to go through, were you within policy? Why does that take 6 to 8 months?
Yeah.
Another good thing with our chief that came from LA, he was like, no. He was in an officer-involved shooting. They took a gun off the scene. But before you went home, they had somebody take you out to the range and you qualified with another gun, you had a gun. My thing has always been with Birmingham. Birmingham, you could carry your own gun. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So if you're involved in an investigation, they took that gun, whether it was theirs or yours, they only took that one. If you had a mental health problem and they were going to take your gun for mental health, well, the only thing they could by law take from you was the city-owned equipment.
The one that you had on.
So how many officers do you know that only own one gun? So is it really helping?
Yeah.
And it's a big thing that you always see. Somebody says, well, I'm scared to go and ask for mental health or substance help or anything like that because they're going to take my badge and gun.
The implications, yeah.
Right. So my thing was, and we got fairly good with it, was, and I support this, is if there's not an immediate threat, why? Why are we taking away part of their identity from them, therefore affecting their mental health even more? Man, try to get some old cops to understand that. Oh, we got to take them from them. They're going to hurt themselves. Okay, well, you're going to go take this one Smith & Wesson M&P that you issued to. He got 15 other guns at the house. Without a court order, exactly. You can't go get them.
You can't take them.
But if they say, I need help, and you say, all right, let's go get help, and you take them to help, you may eliminate that need ever. That's the whole point of wanting to ask for help. And nobody wants to ask for help because they're afraid of stuff like that happening. And it happens. And I've seen it happen multiple times. I was lucky before I left to see a couple times where they didn't do that. But that's still the mindset in most cops. And especially your old heads, your ones that are, again, on that 6th floor, that, oh no, the liability. Okay, well, what happens when he shoots himself with his own gun? Is there no liability in that? You still didn't help him. So that's what I want people to see. It's hard. It's going to be hard for me to try to change the mind of chiefs and sheriffs and deputy chiefs because they're where they are because they got there how they are. But what I would love to see, and what I try to, when I talk to especially younger leaders, just because it's always been done like this doesn't mean it has to stay like this.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of chiefs say, well, we are a family at our department and we want everybody to come here, family. We're going to be treated like it. We love you. We're going to take care of you or whatever. And then turn around and no, you don't. I mean, I've seen it a lot. There's a couple chiefs in this area that if I was ever to go back to a municipal police department, it would be to work for them because they have absolutely took the steps needed to help their people. And I've seen that in my own eyes, and I can hear people say, nah, I've heard they're terrible. No, I have seen him literally help someone that needed the help, and he got it. I get calls all the time.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think it is a really a valuable mindset, especially amongst like first responder organizations that I think, and we're all guilty of it, but like, we get stuck in that mindset of like, oh, well, like this is how it's always been done. So like, this is how we're always going to do it. And it is. And it's, I guess, the natural inclination that, this department's been around for however many years and, and they kind of take the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But like mental health among first responders is fucking broken. They are broken. There are more suicides than line of duty deaths each year in this country. Shit is broken. And at least with what you're involved in, you've at least got access to those people to be trying to show them the evidence and get things implemented. So at least you're in the right room and around the right people where you can be having that kind of that impact that can spread out a little bit more, hopefully.
And that's kind of ties into what we started to do with Operation Righteous Valor. So
so please tell me all about that.
So back in about, I think, late 2014, we started a little organization. It was Alabama Airsoft Association. It was just because nobody was doing big airsoft events in Alabama anymore. The one group that did it had fallen off, so it was like, oh, we're going to do them. And then all of a sudden we got money, and we're like, what are we supposed to do with this money? Because people paid for the event.
Sorry,
so we started
what's an is it? Did you say
airsoft?
But what's an airsoft? Yeah, I don't know that term. I'm sorry.
You know paintball, right? Paintball. Airsoft is the one with the little plastic BBs, and you shoot at each other with them.
Oh, okay. All right.
Some places are not as friendly with it as they are down here. California, they have to be all fancy colors. Here, one of the reasons I started doing it, I actually played it in the 80s when my dad was stationed in Japan, because it's real big over there. A lot of the big manufacturers come from Japan.
Okay.
I did paintball for a while, and then I said I didn't like having the tank and the hose and all of that. And with airsoft, everything was pretty close to accurate with everything. So I had got an airsoft pistol that matched my duty weapon, and I was using it for training, and then started playing some events. The big group around here folded some years ago, and so there's a couple kids that had threw together an event, and I ended up kind of sticking to the side with them, helping with stuff. Again, I'm the oldest out of the dang group. But we started doing that. We did that for a few years, and we raised a bunch of money for different organizations. First Help was actually the last one that I think we did. Which I've known Karen for a long time. I love everything she does as far as making sure that people understand what is actually happening, especially with the statistics and all of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know that the FBI has actually started tracking suicide numbers as well. It's kind of like the CompStat, with the UCR crime.
As in amongst the first responder community?
For law enforcement only. But it's the FBI that's doing it for law enforcement. So you're supposed to report them. That is not known. That just started a couple years ago when I was still with the National Consortium. And so I tried, every time we've had one in Alabama, and last year we had a lot. I tried to push out to the chiefs, say, hey, please report this to the FBI so that they can keep stats with it or whatever.
Well, because from my understanding, for it to be listed in, I don't know whether it's with First Help or some of the other places, you have to have the permission of not only the police department but also from the family. So to find the situation where both parties are willing to go, this is what happened, this was our member, this was our loved one, and it's a lot to be asking for people grieving, to throw my loved one's name on a list that strongly identifies what happened to them. It's understandable that they may be a bit hesitant.
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially when you consider the fact that there are many incidents that happen with a first responder dying that doesn't look like a suicide, but was. And it's pretty well. Everybody knows it, but nobody wants to admit it. And part of that goes into the financial behind of it, as far as line of duty benefits, which there's been big pushes in many states and nationally to make suicide be able to be classified as a line of duty death and to allow for those benefits. And it's a push. It's a fight we're going to have for a while.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get there one day.
But it needs to happen.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. But so First Help was the last one we did. We did Irreverent Warriors, which is a veteran one. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Silky Marches or even what Silkies are. They're very short shorts that the Marine Corps wore for PT shorts. They're called Silkies. Another name for them, the Army, the Ranger panties. They wear black ones, we wear green ones. If you didn't have
as in almost I think I'd almost call them footy shorts, just basically short, very short,
very
workout
short.
Shorts for blokes. I think
Irreverent Warriors is the overall organization, but the Silky Marches is what they do, and they do those throughout the country. Basically they're rough marches and the packs on, and they'll walk around. And I haven't worn a pair of those in, thankfully, 30 years. But anyway, we did them, and then there was a local organization, Saving Forgotten Warriors, that we did a couple for them. Saving Forgotten Warriors went through some stuff, and at that time we started thinking, what if we start our own, do our own nonprofit, and then start looking at how we can be that direct support instead of, giving money to the middle. So
that makes sense, especially with all of your like experience and access to resources and all that kind of thing. Like, and I can imagine sort of some of the people that you're affiliated with and who are in this organization with you, like whether they're current or former first responders, military veterans, like, that kind of network. Everyone sort of tends to know everyone.
Yeah, so about 70% of our board, and right now it's just the board. My stepson is an unofficial volunteer, but he it's just the board. But it's about 70% of our board at this time is either a veteran or a first responder, with some active first responders, as well as we have one member that's in the Army National Guard or Reserves. I can't remember. But most of us are. We have that background. We started off just so Operation Righteous Valor was actually one of our events when we were AAA, but it was our most popular event where we raised most of the money. We had some of the largest events in the state of Alabama, a couple hundred people in a very small area, but it was our most successful one. People had fun. That was people who knew about us, actually around the entire state and areas outside of the state. We had someone come from like Texas one time for that event.
Wow.
So we said, well, if we use that name, we got some brand recognition, as well as just the name sounds like what we want people to believe in. And so we turned around, we registered with the state of Alabama last year as a nonprofit corporation. And like I've said, I've been working about the last year to get all this 501c3 paperwork done, hopefully by the end of this month, back to next month. But we have done a couple smaller events. We did do one airsoft event last year when we first kind of got started and made the announcement of the name change. The problem with that is the place that we did the airsoft event at. That man is the oldest paintball field in the state of Alabama, and last year he said, I'm done, and pretty much retired from allowing people to use the field. I mean, he's an older gentleman and has done so much for us in the past with our events, like covered us under his insurance, so we didn't have to have separate event insurance, and I mean, just helped us up until the last couple of years. He did all the taking the money for registrations and stuff. We started doing that on our own about 2 years ago. But, I mean, just so much help. I'm so appreciative of them. But now we've been looking for the last year to find somewhere else to do one in the state of Alabama. And there's a couple other small fields.
And I think I was going to say, I think I saw you had a sort of golf tournament or something too.
So I'm not a golfer. Matter of fact, I am probably still banned from Kena Air Base golf course because we crashed golf water hazard. Actually, interesting about a golf tournament. That's actually where me and wife number last met. Was a golf tournament for the law enforcement first one for Special Olympics. I got asked to drive her around so she could take pictures, and she's been stuck with me ever since now. Which that was in 2012, so we're doing well. But
there you go, going strong.
But we actually, it actually went pretty well. So one of our board members is a golfer, and it was a golf course that he golfs at, and he pretty much walked up to him and said, "Hey, can I hold a golf tournament?" And we're like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So it was very, very basic. The one that me and my wife met is very huge. It's a huge one. So I kept freaking out kind of when he kept talking about, "No, we're just going to do this, we're going to do this." So we just need about 4 or 5 of us there to help with it. And I'm like, "You sure?" Because we have 50 people helping at the other one. "You sure it's going to be enough people?" "Oh yeah, it's going to be fine." Went great. Everybody loved it. I didn't get to make it because of some other stuff going on. And so, but I was pretty much paying attention throughout it there. We were talking in our group text and stuff, and they were calling me about stuff. Went great. Everybody had a good time. We raffled off some really expensive golf club, Lake Martin Machine Gun, which is a machine gun range near here. They came out. One of our board members knows the guys that own it, and he said, "Hey, you want to donate something?" And so they donated. They bought a hole to sponsor a hole, and then they donated like a gift card to go up there and shoot some machine guns and stuff. Everybody loves to shoot machine guns. So that was the last thing that we've done. Now I just proposed an event.
I was just going to say, so how does it, like, I know you're still sort of going through the registration process, but obviously this is kind of just the latest amalgamation of you and the group that you're affiliated with, like helping people in this community. Like, I guess maybe just sort of explain like how it works in terms of, you know, is it like the fact that you guys are kind of like a resource where if it's like someone's in crisis or there's been a line of duty death and the family needs, you know, funeral money, is it people reaching out and then you guys are offering like financial aid or like utilizing your network of resources to kind of, okay, this person needs rehab, this person needs this, like how does that kind of work?
Sure. So right now what my vision is we've got kind of a 3-stage of where we're going to hopefully finish up at. So right now is the beginning of it. We're kind of getting situated. We're doing these fundraisers to help for the legal aspect of it, but also to have funds aside to be available. And what we have done over the last about year or so is there been a few times where we've been made aware of a veteran who has died by suicide, and we've helped family with money for both the funeral as well as anything else that they may have needed at the time. We're pretty basic kind of on our requests for that. If people need some help with that, it was somebody that one of our board members had served with and knew him and knew the family, and they had kind of been talking to him and talking about how they were kind of struggling at the time with getting everything they needed. So we made a donation there, and that donation at that time was about 50% of the money we had. It wasn't a lot, but it was what they needed, and we sent it to them. We also publicly put that out, not so much how much we were donating or whatever, but hey, they've got this crowdfunding going. Please give to it. And a lot of people in our neighborhood or our area donated to that, even though this family was not even in the state of Alabama. One reason why we got rid of the name of Alabama in our organization, we don't want to be restricted to the state of Alabama. We didn't want to be restricted to airsoft, which is so now we can do golf tournaments. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why. We've also, one thing that we're prepared to do now also to help is one of the things that hurts both first responders and veterans when it's going to get help is sometimes that help isn't free. Co-pays or anything like that. We want to be available. Hey, let us help you take some of this stress off. I don't know how y'all get paid up in Massachusetts, but down here, pay for police officers is horrible. There are agencies here that are paying their officers $10, $11, $12 an hour. Oh, yeah. Yep. It's bad. And so we know that, hey, you want to get the help, but you can't afford it. We're here. We're going to try to help you with that. So that's another section of what we're doing with the money we raise is having some set aside to help with that. Again, we're gathering all the resources. That's what I've been doing with all this stuff I've been getting. There's somebody smarter than me with the website that is going to put a lot of these resources we have. We're going to scan it. We're going to put it on there as a PDF so people can go on there, find it, and have that resource available, as well as the people in our organization having, you know, a list of this is who you call for this or whatever, and gathering those. So the first step, the first phase that we're going through now is being able to provide whatever support personally that we can do as an organization to either organizations. So if an organization wants to host some type of mental health training, they don't have the money to bring the instructors in, we will help you with that. The other part of it being, I need help with something, and we're steering away from like helping for like bills or something like that, but we have resources for that. Because that's one of the biggest stressors, you know, is financially. Just paying your bills is not quite what we want to go with, but I do have a resource for you, and call them, and they're going to help you with that. You get involved in an
Yeah.
officer shooting or something like that, you're out of on an investigation, you can't work extra jobs. And a lot of people here work extra jobs. So that's money out of your pocket. They always tell you, don't rely on your extra job to pay your bills, but everybody does.
Yeah.
And so when that money stops, now you can't pay your mortgage or your rent or something like that. There are resources there to help you. We have access or have contact to that. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
That's what we're building up to. The next phase, which I hope to start hopefully towards the beginning of next year, middle of next year, is being able to help get people placed. So one incident I had when I was an officer at Birmingham is I ended up with a veteran that needed somewhere to go. And I found him a resource that would take him at 1:00 in the morning for that resource. But it was 2.5 hours away. Birmingham Police Department was not going to let me drive 2.5 hours away to take this guy to this resource.
Yeah.
So having the ability where they can call us and we can get a volunteer to pick that person up and take them somewhere is something that that's where we want to build up to.
That's huge.
Now the VA here has
it's about access.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. It doesn't apply to the police or firefighter, but I'll tell you, or veterans so much. But my hardest thing with trying to get somebody into a mental health program or a rehab or a detox with my offenders at work is if they're a sex offender. There's one place in the entire state of Alabama that will take a sex offender. That's it. And I understand that, but sometimes your sex offenders, their charges are, they weren't passing around kiddie stuff or whatever. I've got one that ended up registered as a sex offender because he went to the bathroom outside of an elementary school at 2:00 in the morning. It's stuff like that, and that creates those barriers. So sometimes you have to send people places. Yes. It was that bad. But look, don't get me wrong. I don't like chomos either, but I mean, I'm trying to get people help. When you're trying to get people help, barriers pop up like that. And so it pops up with
of course.
And stuff like that. Sometimes you got first responders. They don't want to go to anything where they're at. They want to get away from somewhere. They feel safer that way.
Yeah.
So going to see a counselor in Anniston, which is, hour or so away, instead of doing it in Birmingham where people will see you or people might know you.
Yeah.
And that's understandable.
Yeah.
So that's phase 2. That's our phase 2 kind of rollout, as well as creating more formal partnerships or resources, which goes into phase 3. And my phase 3, now I would love to do it tomorrow, but to be honest, this is a couple years down the road and all that. But my phase 3 would be for us to be able to open up some type of center ourselves, where we would provide in-house mental health resources, substance use resources, help with VA stuff, get their VA resources and stuff like that. Being able to provide temporary housing if possible. That is my dream. And every time I pass by a building, I look at them. I keep seeing empty schools, and I'm thinking, like, with an empty school, God, I could make so much friggin' housing in there, classrooms, and just so much stuff. And that's my dream build out for Operation Righteous Valor. We're a long way from that. We are pretty much at this point, everything is volunteer. Probably 80% of our expenses are pretty much being paid by me. With me having some extra income now with my VA stuff and leaving Birmingham and all that. We'll eventually get past that and we'll build up and stuff. But that's it's my dream, is what I envision Righteous Valor become. So.
No, well, Tim, I absolutely love your vision for it. I think it's fantastic, and I think, for any of the wonderful resources out there, like it started from someone like you with like a good heart and the best of intentions, going like, you know what, I want to help, and I think as well, like everything has to start somewhere, and it's a process, and the kind of main thing I can equate it to is like, you know, from my own perspective, like I was a cop for 9 years. I've been married to a firefighter for 10 years, and it's only been, you know, I've been a life and wellness coach for first responders for a couple of years now, but it took till last year for me to get the cuts, get the courage, get the time to go back to school. And I'm starting from square one to become a therapist specializing in, you know, treating first responders, emergency services personnel, you know, in the trauma sphere. And I am on a long, long road. I'm so far, you know, at the start, but you know what? I'm on it. I'm on the road. I've made a start. And that's kind of what matters. And it's like, I can tell you, yeah, like my dream is to do like this and this and this. And I'm like, all right, well, none of that's going to get there until God knows when, but making a start. And you guys have made a start. And I think it's fantastic. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
I thought a couple years ago about going and getting my licensed counselor. And at this point now, I did the VA pay off of my student loan, so I'm not going back to school anytime soon. But it was funny because our clinical director for the statewide peer support is a psychiatrist, and I was talking to him about it, and he was like, he's like, if you're gonna do it, I was like, well, I'll do like the there's like a mental health one, there's a substance use one, you know, or whatever. He says, no. He says, do family and marriage. And I said, really? He says, if you think about it, the relationship between cops, and not necessarily their families, but between cops is pretty much like a marriage. He said, you will really get a lot out of that track of counseling that will be so useful in dealing with first responders. And I'm like, I looked at him, I was like, I don't know about that. And so when I was talking to a friend of mine that, like I said, is a cop and a counselor, he was like, oh yeah, no, I would do that one. He says, except for the work you do with reentry and maybe substance use. But if it was for dealing with cops and veterans, I would do that one, the marriage and family. I'm like, I probably could use some marriage therapy. I did that 4 lives. What it is, but I'm not that person. I feel like I could do it and really, but I think what I'm doing now, as far as just trying to bring it to light and everything, is kind of where my place is at this point. And I hope that
100%. And look, if all of us wanted to do exactly the same thing, then you know we wouldn't have such like the great variety that is available. So I think it's, you know, not everyone has to be in the same lane, but we just kind of are all heading in the same direction. I think that's probably the best analogy that I can come up with right now.
No, exactly. I've had a few officers that have got involved in peer support that have started doing like school for counseling and stuff like that. One actually has left law enforcement altogether for it, which I'm 100% support, because that gives me someone to reach out to if I need somebody for help.
Exactly.
And, you know, they always say it takes a village, and I mean it really does. You have to have people from every aspect. You have to have people that served in every. Like I said before, I've been in EMS, I've been in fire, I've been in police, security, I've been in the military, half the military branches out there. And I can't be the answer to everything, even though I feel like I am sometimes. You know, if I got the experience in that. Yeah, I have some experience in that. I've dealt with some stuff as a firefighter, some traumatic incidents and stuff like that. But my guy over here that's been doing this for 20 years and has seen a lot more than me, and also does some type of counseling or peer support or something like that, he'd be much better at it for me. And so that's what I want is, I want to be able to reach out to anybody, you know, somebody for everybody. You know, I may not be the person for you, but I want to have that resource for you, whether it's here, Massachusetts, you know, California, whatever. I mean, that's why I got I was blessed to get on the National Consortium of Preventing Law Enforcement Suicide, and I told them all the time, and I tell everybody else, I was the dumbest guy there, because you had a bunch of people with PhDs and MDs and retired chiefs, and I mean, I'm just me. I always told people that, and I'm thankful for the ones that were in that organization that said, we're not the dumbest person here. And I mean, I was appreciative of that. But while doing that, I met a lot of people. I met people that were kind of my idols in this industry, because I've read all your books. And now I'm looking at you. And, I can fanboy a lot. And, I got the privilege to go to Atlanta. I actually kind of cussed out Megan with the consortium at IACP, because they asked me to be on a panel at the Officer Safety and Wellness Conference that IACP hosts in Atlanta, which is 2 hours away from me. The next year, it was in Anaheim, in Disneyland. And I'm like, y'all going to pick me for that one and not the one that I could drive to? I was a little upset about that. But I sat on that stage with huge names and people that are trying to bring mental health awareness to law enforcement. And Chris, I'm gonna forget it, but he was standing next to me. And so one of the panel questions that came to me, I kind of addressed the crowd, and I used to cuss a lot, really, really bad. But I have young nieces and nephews and a wife that does not mind slapping the back of my head. So I'm a little bit better at it. I still do it. I ain't gonna lie, but I'm not as bad as.
Well, dude, I'm Australian. I'm probably one of the worst you'll meet, so don't worry about me.
If you ain't never watched Dexter, go watch Dexter, because his sister cusses all the time. But my wife's been watching. We've been watching the whole series. I found out the girl says "fuck" 1,000 times in the entire series. It's crazy. But I used to be like that.
I like it.
But I'm up here. I got a nice suit and tie on. I've never been much of a suit and tie guy until one of my jobs at the department. But all these big names right here. The president of IACP, I think, and Chris is right. Chris Scouty. He's sitting next to me, and so I talked about one of the things I brought up. I always talk about we need the officers involved in this and the first line supervisors involved with this talk, not just the chiefs and everybody saying this is how we should be doing this thing or whatever. You need the people to buy into it and push it up, kind of like what we had to do at Birmingham. There was one of the things I was talking about was like, well, how many of y'all are below the rank of lieutenant? I mean, there's probably about 15, 20 people. There's hundreds of people in here. And I said, why? I said, that's one of the big problems. Why are we bringing, I know this is IACP, but this is mental health. You got to get the people that are on the ground to buy into this. And to
boots on the ground,
But I'm watching my mouth and all that. And like the next question that came around is, and Chris said, if your buddy got on the radio and said, I need help, how many of y'all rushing to that? And everybody was like, yeah, whatever. And so how many of y'all would ask for help when you needed it, like you fighting somebody or whatever? And they was all like, some of them rose their hand, and he just goes, fuck you. And I'm always like, what? He says, fuck you. He says, y'all say that, but if you was fighting yourself and you was fighting your demons, you going to ask for help? And I'm just sitting there like, damn, you're cussing this shit. And I'm like, cuss? Wait, we can do that? So I don't have to sit there and act like I'm all fancy now because I'm up here or whatever. I could just be the same asshole I've been my whole life. And that really reacts me. I didn't cuss a whole lot during this. Like I said, I'm a little better at it now, but I did. And I didn't second guess myself when I said it, because I'm usually like, So I do cuss when
I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the email. That
you did. I did.
Allowed, if not encouraged. So
my wife was like,
"That's
just make sure you talk appropriately." My wife calls my accent, so my mom's from New Hampshire. My dad's from Michigan. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, throughout the Gulf Coast. But my dad was Air Force. We moved all over the damn world and everything. I lived up north for a little while. A lot of people down here say I talk like a Yankee, but that's because I still say pop instead of Coke, which everything is a Coke down here. But other than that, my accent to me is very still very Southern or whatever. My wife calls it my ghetto Cajun Yankee is what she calls it. So she's like, try to keep out a little bit of the ghetto part of it. And I was like, I will do the best I can, but she is Australian, so I don't know how that's going to go. So I've only been to Australia once. That was on a ship in the Marine Corps, which was crazy. And I will say that the only people I think that ever really caused me to question my drinking abilities were Australians. But
we're kind of good like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of funny because they're like, it was a bunch of Marines, you know. I mean, the Navy guys, yeah, y'all can bring them on the table, no doubt. We held our own. We held our own, but it was rough. It was rough after that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I want to go back. I want to take my wife there. She's never been there. She's never been anywhere on the entire side. A couple years ago, we did a cruise out of Rome and went to New York on it, and all but like 2 of the ports were ports I had pulled into when I was in the Marine Corps. I don't remember much of them because I was drunk for most of them. My what I look for now is different than it was back then. But there were some places that I remembered. It was kind of cool. And then we did one from New York to London, which I hadn't been to any of those. We went to Normandy. We're going to Paris and Thanksgiving. So I'm pretty excited about that. We do a lot of traveling, and that's
great.
Everybody always says, "Oh, you're taking 2 weeks off here, 2 weeks off there." I'm like, taking my time. I ain't never going to have time at the end of the year where they say, "Oh, you got to burn so many hours or you're going to lose them." Nope, that's not going to be me. She does. She's been with the Bureau for 20 plus years now, so she gets 16 hours a month. So she still ends up taking December off. But I'll always use mine to the best of my ability because
that's
that
a
really
great attitude to have.
makes
you can't take it with you.
I used to take my work phone with me all the time. I used to keep my work phone on me all the time when I got home. It was with me. It's by me now. Actually, because I was going to make a comment about the guy that I have whose wife works for the VA. She sent me an email tonight. And this right before this to send me about a resource that she wants us to bring Operational Righteous Hour to and to speak at. So just, you'd never know where you find people. But I've done, now, if I'm not on call, which we're on call about once every 3 weeks, my phone stays in the kitchen. It's my wife's pill holder when she's getting her pills ready at night, so that don't roll off this place. That's it. I used to take them on vacation most of the time, or I'd forward my email to my personal email so I didn't miss anything important. I ain't done that since the entire time I've been at this agency. I don't do it at all. And it's encouraged.
It's a healthy level of separation.
It's encouraged like that. At Birmingham, it was not like that. You better answer that phone when you off. It don't matter if you're on call. You better answer that phone. If you had one. If you had a city issue phone, they didn't issue it to everybody. But that used to be how I was. I stressed over what was going on when I wasn't there. Man, I don't give a damn anymore. I will come back and they'll be like, you got 10 people around you. You got 3 that got arrested, 1 that killed somebody. You got this, and this. Okay. I'll deal with it when I get back. I don't care. I used to text people and be like, what's going on? What's happening? No, I don't do that no more. When I left Birmingham, I didn't realize that I was under stress there. I had been working so hard to establish that program and to help everybody else. That was all I cared about. I took the interview for this job because I was kind of frustrated at the time at Birmingham because they kept changing my assignment when I made sergeant, like a lot. And it pissed you off. My off days and my schedule changed 11 times in less than a year. And it was driving me crazy. I finally went back to SROs, and then COVID happened. I went down to our dispatchers as a police liaison for a year during COVID. But I was going back to the SROs, and I knew that. A guy that I worked as an SRO with, had come over to Pardons and Parole in the Birmingham office and said, man, we don't work weekends, we don't work nights. He said, you should really put in. Well, okay, I kind of like the sound of it. I'll check it out. So I applied for it.
Yeah.
I interviewed for a couple different offices, including the Birmingham office, which I had pretty good knowledge that I would get that job. Well, I also interviewed for a job in Walker County, Jasper, Alabama, at what was called a day reporting center, which is intensive supervision, where they come out, they come every single day. They get different classes, GED, better decision making. I don't know if you ever heard of MRT is one of the courses they do and stuff like that. And I was like, I kind of like how that is. The whole purpose of it is to make them be successful. I did those interviews, and at that point, I was like, yeah, I'll probably take one of them. I work on the weekend. I'm going to get a take-home car. I'm going to get a decent pay. I actually took a $10,000 pay cut for it. Well, the first place that called me was for the day reporting center in Jasper, and I said, yeah, okay, great, I'll take it. He was like, well, you can start in 2 days. And I'm like, no, I can't. I got to give them a notice or something. Because the state our pay period start on the 1st and the 16th every month. And so, or the whole time. So it was coming up on the 1st, and it was like, you can start in a couple days. No, I need at least a couple weeks or whatever. And so I took that job, and I was like, right when I took that job, I wanted to wait because you don't take any of your sick time with you when you leave the city. It just stays there. So I'm like, I'm going to burn a few days of sick time, and then I'll put my 2-week notice in. You can't take sick time after your 2-week notice. So I was like, I'll do that. So I did that, and I came back, and they sent me straight over back to the unit, back to the SROs, and I'm like, Captain, I hate to do this, but here's my letter of I'm leaving. And she was like, and I also did that on March 31st instead of April 1st because I didn't want people to start saying, oh, it was April Fool's Day joke. It was.
Good thinking.
Oh, you're just kidding. You're not going anywhere. Whatever.
Yeah.
But everybody was cool about it. I mean, I had a couple people who were like, hey, man, I heard you're going to be on the next lieutenant's promotion. And I'm like, I'm good. Because, like, lieutenant, you start screwing my damn schedule again. I don't do that. And I was like, no, I appreciate it. But
it sounds like you have such joy and passion for what it is that you do now. You really sort of have like kind of found your, what do you call it, your niche, but just found something that really sort of feeds you in that respect.
Well, I noticed within the first couple of weeks I was gone, just how I just seemed happy. I had kind of the boss I had, we butted heads a few times, but nowhere near ever the supervision that I dealt with at Birmingham, with how bad supervisors. Yeah. Like I said, I thought I was good when I left. When I got over there, I started realizing it was like, I mean, the old little thing people say, a whole weight just came off. It was like, wow.
Yeah. And you don't realize you're carrying it till it's off. Yeah.
3 years later, the weight is actually off. And I've lost 50 pounds since I left there. Part of that is with my diabetes and Ozempic and stuff like that. But I mean, I lost 25, almost 30 pounds straight on my own after leaving there. Granted, there was not as many good places to eat in Jasper as there were in the city of Birmingham. It's a small town. But, I mean, just the stress of it. My stress has been great. I transferred to Birmingham, the Birmingham field office where I was supposed to go originally. I transferred there back there last March. So I'm closer to home. My wife's office is literally down the hill from mine. We go to lunch all the time.
Oh, wow.
It's just,
sounds like a nice work-life balance.
I know people that are still at Birmingham that are miserable, and they had the opportunity to leave, but they choose not to because they're like, I'm already here. I already got all this. Well, guess what? I was vested into my retirement at 5 years at Birmingham. I left at 32, almost 13.
Yeah.
So I was vested into my retirement.
Yeah.
I don't see it now, but I'll get it. And then I'll have enough time when my wife is finally eligible to retire from the FBI. I'll have enough time to retire from the state. So now I've got 2 pensions. I got my VA check coming in, her pension coming in. When we retire in 2036, we will both be able to retire. Not that I'm counting her.
Yeah.
But I'll leave before
No,
that
it
if I
doesn't
can
sound
get
like it
this
at
the
all.
nonprofit going where I want it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you guys have a website that people
Yes.
can check out, like, or is it kind of just more of like a landing page at the moment, or?
It's very basic right now. It is one of our guys is working on it because I try to do it and I'm not smart enough. It is being built. It is there. You can reach out
Yeah.
through as far as with contact and all that, and that's it's just oprv.org. So the operation.
Okay.
Which
And I'll pop that in the show notes
I
so
appreciate
people
it.
can check it
And
out.
then
And you guys are open to receiving, like, say someone listens to this and goes, my goodness, like, I love their mission, I love the work that they're trying to do. If someone wants to donate, are you guys in a position where you're able to accept donations?
yes, and so that's actually something that we keep available. So the way that the IRS looks at it, that as long as we follow our paperwork within 27 months, any donations made prior to that can be considered tax free. If we don't get that paperwork done in 27 months, then we'll have to send something else saying otherwise. But we're not anywhere close to our 27 months, and it will be done here shortly. Our big thing now is the awareness, and then maybe helping with like some donations towards like events or something like that, or really anything. There is I think a button on there. I'm not sure. We're also on Facebook under Operation Righteous Valor, and we are there. We just I just set up a
Are you on
LinkedIn
Instagram
page.
too?
I know that AAA had one there. I don't know if it converted over when they did it. I will ask my social media guy because I probably uploaded them.
All right. I'll do some stalking.
Yeah. There is a phone number that's listed on our information. It's a Google phone number, and for some reason, we are getting a ton of spam calls with it. That's like all we're getting from it. So it is kind of like screened right now. So if somebody needs to reach out to us by phone, please leave a message. I check all of them when we get them. We will open that up once I figure out how to get rid of all the spam stuff. We'll open it completely up. But there's also text messaging on it. It has a menu as far as if there's a certain something you're trying to reach out to us for, as far as if it's for an event or if it's just for general questions or if you need help. So that's why I try to check them as soon as we get.
Or even if someone wants to be available to you guys as like a resource, like you're saying, you kind of don't want to just be, restricted to Alabama. So if there's people from like across the states,
definitely. That's the biggest thing we're working on now is establishing those relationships. And so we do want resources from everywhere because we'll get calls from places that aren't from around here. Again, one of the reasons why we didn't want to keep Alabama in our name. We want to be available nationwide.
That makes sense.
What that means as far as the organization later on as to where we branch out or something like that. But we want to be able to have resources everywhere. I've got friends from the military that are from all over the country. And so, I mean, they may need somebody that needs help. So, we welcome everything. I will say this. So we had the golf tournament, and I've had a fundraiser I've wanted to do for a while. Like I said, I'm Gulf Coast born, or born and raised, and all of that. So I made the proposal in our last board meeting a couple weeks ago, and that is that we are looking to host a gumbo cook-off. Hopefully towards the end of March. I've reached out, or one of our board is reaching out to what I would like to be our ideal venue. And I'm hoping to hear back from that hopefully in the next couple of days and kind of lock in a date. I love gumbo. I mean, I had gumbo for lunch today. I had gumbo for lunch yesterday. I love it. I don't eat much seafood anymore, but I mean, I'll make my chicken and my sausage and all of that. So my goal with it is to do a actual gumbo contest. I want to do what I'm going to call like an at-large contest or a free-for-all kind of contest where it's any other Cajun dish. So either red beans and rice, etouffee, something like that for one category, and then do some type of like a Southern or Cajun dessert little category. bring a bunch of
Sounds
people
like
in,
fun.
have a good time, and just really have fun with it. There's chili cook-offs all the time. Down here in the South, we get some gumbo cook-offs. There wasn't any in this area for like a long time, and then like this year we had like 4, and I'm like, really? So we're gonna do that.
That
Hopefully
sounds
next
awesome.
spring, and so everybody wants to come down for it. We really like you to come down. At some point I'm sure we'll do like merchandise and stuff as far as like shirts.
But by all means, keep me updated if you guys have like stuff that you want me to share or merch, anything like that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to send you up. We do have patches. Everybody has patches nowadays. But send you up a patch.
I would love that.
And we might have a couple of our coins we made for the last Operation Righteous Valor. We did a big deal with the last Operation Righteous Valor because we knew, not everybody else knew, but we knew that was the last Operation Righteous Valor, and then we were transitioning to the new name after that. Nobody knew that at the event until after the event. And so we might still have some of those coins and stuff I wanted to send up to you. And like I said, eventually I'm sure somebody will figure out how to put all that on there and stuff. But anybody has any kind of questions or any suggestions, recommendations, advice, professional knowledge that knows more about, I'm in a bunch of non-profit groups and associations so that I make sure that I don't screw anything up. Sometimes I feel still like I am sometimes, but I stress over things a lot more than I guess I should, which is me. But
it sounds like you are working hard and, heart's in the right place and intentions are, and like I said earlier, like you're in the right room. So that's sort of even like getting into the room sometimes is like the hardest bit. So you're actually in the room. So baby steps, we will get there. But I am cognizant of the fact that you worked, today and have had a very, very busy day. So I don't want to keep you. But no, I just want to say thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and even, your personal experience with your some of your own personal struggles and stuff, because I know that can be really hard to share. So I'm really, really grateful. And I love hearing about Operation Righteous Valor. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the growth and everything you guys want to do with it, because it sounds like a really great resource.
Appreciate it. I'm really glad you had me on here. When it comes to podcasts, I think this has been my biggest kind of one so far, and so I've always been on with other people. So I got to be the whole one this time.
Yeah. So. Oh no. I think you have done marvelously well. So we normally finish these episodes off, Tim, by asking people a couple of questions, and it originates from the name of the podcast, which is I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. And it basically is about the fact that, a lot of first responder roles, or even, being in the military and all that kind of thing, we see a lot of darkness in our professional lives, and because that, really just kind of permeates a lot of our human experience. And everyone sort of copes in their own different ways. And so the first question I like to ask is, what do you do for yourself in order to be able to hold space for any darkness that you experience?
For me, I would say the first part of it is the fact that my wife works in the industry as well. She understands what we go through. A little bit more, ideal than, some of your other spouses or whatever. And she is pretty good about recognizing when I'm getting into that area. I've come home to pizza and a beer, sitting out for me, ready to go. She's been my biggest rock throughout the years with this, and it really helped me to get to where I found my different ways to get rid of that darkness or get rid of that stress. I told you earlier by email, about me flying. She was the one to push me to go get my pilot's license. We bought a plane right before I finished my training. We do that a lot, our traveling, all of that. She's been the one that has helped me to find better ways to deal with it than getting sloppy drunk is what I used to. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's sometimes my biggest recommendation to people is to find somebody that will just listen, and that can deal with that.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's really, to me, that's been the biggest thing for my dark has been having someone that, like, if my flash drive is getting a little, full, then, she'll give me hers to put some of it into, I guess. And she can.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every spouse is able to do that, but she's been in the industry for 20 plus years. So she's seen the darkness that we deal with. She used to, she's not an agent, but she's support, but she was a part of their SWAT call outs, negotiator team and all of that stuff. And so she has seen it. And, in the same sense, she also can tell me to just, you'll be fine, shut up. She'll do that sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's definitely
no, and
my knowledge.
Yeah. Well, it also sounds like that sort of is a bit of like a crossover with the second question that I normally ask, which is what can someone do in order to help you hold space for your darkness?
As well, is part of it is having that someone to talk to, not knowing so much that understands. Like it's very important also to have someone you can talk to that's not on the job as well, because cops hang out with cops, especially younger cops. They hang out with cops and that's it. They don't have other friends. Please, for the love of everything, have other friends or family or something like that. Yeah. But my thing is this, to me, is have something that you do that is not anything having to do with the job. One of the things I do in my classes is I go around the entire room. They talk about icebreakers, but I want to know one thing that you do or one fact about you that has absolutely nothing to do with law enforcement. Tell me about it. Mm-hmm. And I'll go through and people will tell me all these different things. And some people are like, nothing. I work, I go home. I play video games. Yeah. When you play video games, are you playing police games? Like, nah, I'm playing basketball, this or what. Okay. So you're doing something that's not law enforcement. Forget about the job where you can just focus on that. For some reason nowadays, people collect shoes. Not women, men collect tennis shoes.
Oh, like basketball type.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't understand that, but apparently that's the thing. I had a ton of answers like that. Podcasts. I had a lot of people that do podcasts. People that do stream video games. Do something. For me, I go out and I make things go boom. The airsoft. I am our residential pyro guy when it comes to that. I told people for a while that my wife married me because the federal government wanted to know why I was Googling IEDs. I'm trying to figure out how to make an airsoft version of one. Stuff like that. My neighbors know if something goes boom, it's either the mine down the hill that we hear every now and then, but they stop finally, or it's Tim in the driveway. So, normally I'm smart. I get on the Facebook group for our neighborhood and say, got to make something go boom, so they don't get worried. Travel, man. I still find cops when I travel because I like to trade patches and coins and stuff like that. I like to get a picture with a cop somewhere in a different country or whatever. But I'm not a cop when I travel. I'm just me. I just want to see everything. I want to drink everything and eat everything. I mean, that's. I've been to over 40 countries, probably a good 50% of them at least. I've been through the military or whatever, but a lot of that has been on vacations and on traveling and just trying to see things. Yeah. Do something that clears your mind. It just takes your mind off of whatever's happening, whether it's trauma at work, whether it's an officer-involved shooting, seeing some of the scenes that we see that are just completely traumatic. One of the most traumatic scenes that I can remember in my whole career was an airplane crash. My last night as a firefighter in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, there was a 12-year-old girl that died in that crash. The whole family died. There was a 12-year-old girl. I had to sit on that plane through the night until the FAA got there with the body still there. The next day, I'm at a bar, and they're talking about the plane crash and talking about the 12-year-old girl wanted to be a dentist. What 12-year-old kid wants to be a dentist? I broke down in the middle of the bar, bawling my eyes out. My solution at the time was to drink more. That didn't help. That started me really on that downward spiral that I went through until I got to my culminating event. But don't let that be your only type of release or your only type of coping method. Look, sometimes you need to sit down, you need to have a drink. Absolutely. I like my whiskeys. I like my wine. I mean, I like tequila way too much, but that's a different. So, but my thing is have some type of healthy outlet. And if that outlet is calling me on my phone, and I'm giving my phone number out to everybody on your podcast right now. I really will. I'll do that to everybody that I know. I have no problem. You can cut it out later if you want, but it's 205-790-3596. And if you need to call me and cuss me out because you've got something going on that you have nobody else to, normally my wife will hear my phone if I don't, and she'll wake me up, and I'll get out of bed. Hell, half the time she tells me not to even get out of bed, but I'm going to because I'm going to, hopefully she'll go back to sleep, but she don't. But she used to make me coffee. I don't drink coffee anymore. But that's the thing. You've got to have something and something away from people. And that might be it. It might be, well, you feel like you can call your buddy and vent to about something. Man, do we really know everybody we work with like that? I got people that I like at work, but I don't know if I trust as many people at work that I can call up and bitch to them about something, especially if it's something work related.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I have a shirt that is probably one of my favorite shirts. It's, one of these ones that's made by the Valor Project. And it's the one that says, I can't promise to solve all your problems, but I can promise that you won't have to face them alone. And I will do that. And I got a plane. If I got to come to you, it might take a little while. It's small, but you want to come down here, I'll take you up in the plane. I'll take you on the boat. I'll take you some barbecue or some food or whatever. Just find somebody that could be that person for you, whether it's a spouse, a friend, or me, or anybody. So,
no,
I hope I didn't rant too much, but
that all sounds good. You are fine, Tim. You're absolutely fine. But I do want to let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
I really appreciate it.
We will wrap it up. And no, thank you for your time. It's been wonderful. So like I said, I will put all of Tim's contact details, Operation Righteous Valor's website and Facebook information. I'll put it all in the show notes. So if anyone is interested in getting in contact, looking for resources, wants to be a resource, wants to donate, any of the options available, you guys will be able to find the information there. So thank you for your time, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Erin. Y'all have a good night.
Cheers, you too. All right, this has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. I've been your host, Erin Jane. And as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers.